And welcome to another Bloom Masterclass series. My name is Dr. Claire Musselman, and I want to thank you for joining us for Resilient Foundations, Cultivating Grit and Grace. This is part of the Inspired series, fueling your soul to ignite the fire that is your life. These classes are found on demand and live through Bloom, and you can access these classes, these courses through the Bloom Vault, and we are happy to have you here. So let's kick this off. First of all, I'm Dr. Claire Musselman. I'm a behavioral scientist. I own the company DCM, Dr. Claire Muselman, and do a lot of training around behavioral science. And so today I am happy to share a lot of this self-leadership with you. So let's get to it. All right. Our goal today is to start looking at what do you want for your life? And when we start looking at the resiliency factor, we really want to figure out how do we continue to ignite that fire? That's what this whole series is about. How do we figure out what's going on in our bodies from a physiological standpoint so that you can be the very best version of you that you can be? So our goal is to figure out how do we build that foundation and how do we ignite that from within. So we're going to look at what does it look like from a strength standpoint of actually getting ourselves to bounce back quicker and really figure out what can fuel us to keep us going in a sustainable construct so you are not burning out. We are going to look at the elements of grit and grace and try and find that balance and figuring out the power that exists within those two. And then lastly, because it's me, we're walking away with some tactical tips, tricks, and tools for you to be able to implement in your life immediately. So with that, I want you to start with a quick pause and think about this. Your energy is sacred. This is where we look at time as the only currency and energy is how we transmit a lot of what we do. Your energy is sacred. Let's fuel it. Let's figure out how to do this. So today, what we're going to do is we are going to understand some of our core concepts that we're going to dive into. So we're looking at resilience, we're looking at grit, and we're going to look at grace. And then we're going to define those and really pick them apart, kind of like how we look at us as an onion and we're going to peel away these layers. We're going to do the same thing with these concepts. And then we're going to look at how do we build mental toughness? Like this is where we start to look at resilience as that ability to bounce back and to do it quickly. So what are some tools that we can use in our repertoire for some emotional agility? Then we're going to reframe some of our setbacks. Okay, we know that they're happening. We know that they're going to come. They're inevitable. But how do we look at them from a series or a place of passion and compassion and some power within that? And then the grit and grace framework, guess what? There's a framework that exists with this. So we will look at what that looks like from a practical application system. And lastly, of course, we've got some guided practice and takeaways so that you can start doing this immediately. So let's talk about resilience. What is it? It's the bounce back effect. This is where how fast can you recover from difficulties? So if you have a setback, how quickly can you reframe it and start moving forward again? And this is different in all of us depending on a lot of things. But just to even look at the whole foundation of our core, we want to think about the life force pyramid. So a lot of how we show up in an average day is dependent upon our nutrition, our sleep, and how much movement our body has gotten from the day before. This has a direct impact on how our brain is functioning and how mentally tough that we can be in a situation. There are times that we can be more emotional when we're more tired, or maybe we haven't been nourishing our body in a way that we could. And this can really impact how you show up. Your cognitive load for the day is defined by a lot of these core competencies. And so if we want to think about that from the standpoint of how much sleep did you get last night? How good are you doing at your nutrition? This includes water. Make sure you're hydrating. And of course, lastly, how much movement is that beautiful body of yours getting? So it's not about the lack of struggle. When we think about resilience, this is where we're really looking at. There's a lot of power in the beauty of challenges. And this is where we want to focus on how we respond to those challenges. So some of those things look like emotional regulation, looking at mental flexibility and how quickly we can adapt. What is our adaptation capacity? And again, if we go back to that life force pyramid, a lot of this starts with how much sleep have you been getting? How much nutrition are you putting in your body? Is it quality? You name it. And we look at our movement. And then if we want to take it up to the next level, that would go into relationships. But let's just start thinking about the basics and how we show up and what impacts our immediate cognitive load. So some of the other concepts we're going to talk about today, let's get to grit. And then we'll move on to grace. Grit is how much persistence you have over time. And we look at this from grit is really like that digging in. What does that look like to be committed to your long-term goals? You embrace challenges, kind of running at them and are being like, okay, what do I need to do to work through this? Okay, this is the framework that we have. These are the cards that we've been dealt. Great. Let's keep going. And then we look at how we utilize this from a purpose-driven action of where we are now to where we want to get to. And how do we continue to draw upon those reserves of our purpose and our passion, connecting to that deeper meaning. We see this happen a lot where people have a deeper connection to something, whether it be a higher power, a very meaningful purpose, figuring out exactly what's going to fuel you using that motivation from an emotional intelligence standpoint. But this is where we're looking at the long game of it. And so when we're looking at this, this is where we look at grit is not that hustle and grind culture. It's not a toxic cult. It's not a toxic hustle. What it is looking at how do we continue to rebounce and move forward. Bounce setbacks help us push forward. And so you want to think about it in that construct. Perseverance and passion for long-term goals is how Angela Duckworth defines grit. Then lastly, we have the beautiful concept of grace, compassion in motion. And we need a little bit of all of this. We need that resilience. We need grit to keep us growing. And grace is this beautiful concept that helps us to act kindly towards ourselves throughout this process. We also really need to look at our own emotional intelligence towards ourselves. So we do lead with empathy, but you've also got to self-regulate with it too. And gentleness is seen as a strength when we are using grace towards situations, towards other people, and most importantly, towards yourself. Softness isn't weakness. I've had to learn this one on my own, but it can be very powerful. Also, when we're looking at the sustainability of grit, and how we approach ourselves from a grace standpoint, this is how we start to really look at what is the words that we use in our daily life? How are we talking to ourselves? How are we framing situations and setbacks? And what are we going to do with it now that we are aware? So let's think about this. Let's de-myth some of these common myths that exist in this. So resilience means pushing through no matter what. That's what a lot of people believe. Resilience is just that innate ability to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, if we're gonna use this from a resiliency bounce back standpoint, offer ourselves some grace, and we're looking at grit for the longevity, this is where the truth means that sometimes resilience means rest and recalibration. So you have to know when your reserves are depleted. So I told you, like we all start with the cognitive load at the beginning of the day. Sometimes those reserves are really low. And that can be because you've been running far too hard for far too long on little tiny reserves. And this is where we see this a lot. And we see this impact high achievers because they're pouring out, they're doing all of the things, but they're not taking time to pause and actually rest and rejuvenate themselves. So we want to figure out what do you need for that to continue to bounce back and keep moving forward. And then we recalibrate along the way because emotional intelligence is going to help us with our own self-awareness and self-regulation and that motivation component. But we've got to recalibrate and use that grace towards ourselves to keep that resiliency, that bounce back high and strong. Grit means never quitting. Okay, myth, because you've got to be strategic in what you're doing. Sometimes the way that we're functioning or the how fast we're going or the speed in which we're traveling, whatever that looks like, we need to pivot at some point. And this is kind of in construct with the exact last comment where resilience means rest and recalibration. But this time it also means that knowing when, hey, the path that you're on isn't the right one. So maybe we pivot or we change or we strategize how to do it differently or how to do it better. Or some of that recalibration comes into play where we're like, okay, this isn't working. We have to figure out what's going to happen next. What do we do with the resources we have? How do we reallocate that? Can we still be moving in the same direction, but we need to shift a goal? Do we need more resources? Do we need more people? You got to figure this out. And what can you outsource, especially from your own life? Things to think about with that. All right. The third myth. Grace means letting others walk all over you. Ah, false. Nope. Let's change that. Grace is including healthy boundaries because when you're offering someone grace, that means you are being respectful of your boundaries and also respectful of theirs. Here's the thing though, ours tend to fall to the wayside because we think that we're pushing through no matter what. we're not quitting. And so sometimes we let our boundaries go to the wayside to help other people before protecting ourselves. But if we go back to that cognitive load I talked about, got to protect that. So, how do you start showing up for you and paying attention to what you need from a boundary standpoint, whether that be your time, your energy, or your resources? Those are your precious commodities that you need to be aware of how you are managing them. And this is when we start to look at resilience, how quickly you can bounce back. How good are you at taking care of yourself along this way? Are you good at calendaring off your time? When you say you're going to leave at 4 o'clock, are you getting up and you're out the door? How do you start to regulate this? And this is where we start to take a self-awareness assessment of how we are, where are we acting, where do we have some gaps, and then how do we recalibrate from that space to continue to move forward? Only you're the one that can answer this. So I will present the questions and you get to provide the solutions to your life. You need one more than the other. Okay, no, when we are looking at grit and we are looking at grace, this is a balancing act. There is a power in understanding the balance between these two. These forces help us where we're going to try and push through and be strategic about this, but also offering ourselves some compassion, some rest, and some rejuvenation along the way. It is how we get more powerful. We have better brain power. We've got better decision-making capacity. We're able to show up better for people when we are able to regulate ourselves. When we get exhausted or depleted or burned out, our emotional regulation falls to the wayside. And sometimes we just don't have it in us. So my goal is to make sure that you are able to put some healthy boundaries in place and understand some of these common myths so that this doesn't happen to you and we can figure out how for you to bounce back even faster than before. So I want you to think about this. And if you, well, you can't throw it in the chat because this is a recorded session, but some things that I want you to think about. Where would you rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. I would prefer you don't use that middle 3, but you do you. Where are you at right now with your resiliency? I want you to think about that. Your ability to recover right now. Would you say it is high? Would you say that it is low? Are you somewhere in between? Try to not pick that middle point. I want you to take a side. I can tell you that my ability to recover, I'm doing okay. I'd probably give myself, if we can't pick a 3, maybe we'll see. All right. So then we go to grit, that perseverance towards our goals. Sometimes we have to get really crystal clear on what we want. So in order for us to understand our perseverance towards our goals, we need to be crystal clear on what those goals are. And then you write them down because when you write them down, it makes it official. It means that you're actually committing to something. And then how often are you checking in on that? Are your passions, are your pursuits all going towards that goal? Or are they distracting you from the energy that you need to have to move forward towards that goal to complete it? So then I want you to also think about the third one. Where are we at on our scale of 1 to 5 here? What is our grace, our compassion and action? Oh, I will tell you that is, I am low on that. We're going on a 1 to 2 with that grace. I would like to say my resilience is a 4 and our grit, I'm giving myself a 5. You're not getting in my way. So the thing is, I do sacrifice myself along this way. So as I am saying this to you guys, I promise I'm going to go back and watch this because a lot of the things that I am saying right now, I need to hear myself. So which word do you need more of right now? Oof, for me, I think I've got to offer myself some grace. What's that word look like for you? All right, let's get to my favorites. Welcome to the neuroscience part. So when we start to look at what is going on in your brain, this is where I love this. This is why I became a human behavior scientist. If you ever remember the book, The Way Things Work, I like to know what the way things work from a brain standpoint. I like to pick it apart and figure out why do we behave the way that we do. So let's think about what is going on in us from a physiological standpoint of resiliency in the brain. So neuroplasticity is this awesome stuff that we can rewire and help recongregate. And we can really establish these new neural pathways that can help us fire differently from a decision-making capacity. Here's what, though, we want to remember. When I told you that life force pyramid at the beginning that is impacted by your sleep, your nutrition, and your movements, told you that hydration was a part of this. Our brains need water. It helps us when we are firing and we're trying to connect from point A to point B. We have a lot of misfires. You've got to stay hydrated if you are having misfires. If you think, oh my gosh, where did that thought go? A lot of times we're dehydrated. We want to go and make sure that we are nourishing ourselves from a standpoint, not only from food, but making sure that you're taking care of yourself. A heavy percentage of the population, like in the 80s, is chronically dehydrated. So we don't want to be that person. And I am preaching to the choir on this one. I know that. And if you know me, you know that I know that too. So your brain can be rewire its stress responses. We can either think about things differently, we can put little parameters in place, and we can actually change the way our brain thinks about situations and how it responds to situations. This is why emotional intelligence is such a forte right now, and it's something that we should have been paying attention to for a while, but this is why it is so wonderful. Your brain can rewire those stress responses. So let's think about that from a self-awareness standpoint. When do you start to feel stress? Like I can tell you when I have high intense meetings that are coming up, I know that I can start to feel a little bit of stress. So I need to figure out what I do to keep those cortisol levels down so that I don't go into high stress modes. So a lot of times that is looking at what are the proof points that I can share? How can I structure a meeting so that I don't come across aggressive or have facial reactions that are not going to be great? I don't want to be called emotional. So what do I do to set myself up for success? A lot of times I need to write it out. I need to write out what is the actuality behind things and what is my end game. What do I want to get out of this? And then I work backwards with how I'm going to get there. Mapping this out and looking at it from like a decision-making capacity from a strategic standpoint can really help me solve some of my cortisol levels, get myself down, and then I can rewire that stress response into a more solution-focused element. What do you think you can do for you? Then we want to look at this from a hormone balance standpoint because high cortisol absolutely disrupts our emotional regulation. Higher our cortisol levels are, the lower our patience is. So we want to think about that. I want you to tell me how often, and you can just talk this out with me. It's just you and me here. All right, how often are you completing the stress cycle in your body where you can just truly, exhale, feel good, roll your shoulders back and down with me. Let's do this a couple of times and just kind of breathe. How often do you take a brain break? Do you give yourself the ability to just breathe? Do you go outside in nature and not take your phone? What else are you doing to complete that stress cycle? How often are you getting lost in the feeling of flow, meaning that you kind of lose your sense of time? Maybe it's reading. Do you get to do that daily? What about exercise? Maybe exercise is helping you complete that stress cycle. Maybe it's some type of creative expression, or it could be spending time with your dog. Our goal is that we are trying to figure out a way to complete that stress cycle to get those cortisol and adrenaline levels down to give you a little bit more hormone balance. And ideally, you're trying to complete this every 24 hours. Now, what am I talking about from this stress cycle? This is like when you see a dog chase a rabbit runs super fast and their cortisol levels spike and their adrenaline levels spike to try and get themselves to safety. Well, what happens in our world is that we have lots of little stressors that continue to push us into that kind of mentality. We just don't take the time to bring it back down. When the rabbit stops and realizes that it's in safety, its cortisol levels and adrenaline levels drop. Humans are on all the time. How do we figure out what is actual stress and what we are in control of? So sometimes rewiring this can be really helpful, and then we go back to our neuroplasticity. But things that I want you to think about. Then we have to look at our nervous system. So we know when we get fired up, all right, we've got hormones that are pumping through us. Well, then what happens to our nervous system? If you've ever had a hug with someone where they like squeeze your body and you can like feel yourself relax, that is calming your nervous system. So when we use tools like grit and grace, and we're trying to utilize this from a standpoint of keeping ourselves in an aligned perspective where we are still pushing forward, but we're doing so in a way that offers us a space that's like, hey, is this really as big of a deal? Can we chunk this out? Are there different ways that we can be approaching this to help be kinder to ourselves for a more sustainable process and workflow? This can help you improve your regulation because if you are operating from your sense of grit and grace, it's like you giving your brain a hug and just saying, hey, I see you. I know you're trying. I know we got to keep going. All right, here's some grace along the way. And the whole purpose of all of this is that there is that giant mind body connection. Again, what the mind can think to achieve, the body can get there. We just have to make sure that we are regulating it in a way that makes us healthy, happy, and sound along the way. So, when we're talking about emotional agility, one of the things that's really fascinating is to figure out what you are feeling. So, I'm asking you to name your emotion. So, if you've ever seen an emotions wheel, it's bigger than just happy, sad, mad. There are a lot of other emotions, and what we want to do is really dig into that. What is the specific emotion that we are feeling? So maybe if we didn't accomplish something in the time that we wanted to, we feel like a failure or we feel shame as a result of it. We want to figure out what those emotions are and where they're coming from and why they exist within us. And we can hold space. You are in control of your life. When we are able to name this and get specific to figure out why do I feel like this when these situations occur, and we start to really self-reflect, they're like, okay, why? What is this? What am I in control of? What decision-making capacity do I have along the way? And we can reframe this. So then we get to choose our response to it. All right. So if I know that there's a big stressful meeting coming up, what can I do to make sure that I'm prepared? I try and regulate myself. I'm going to practice my emotional agility. I feel this. Why? All right. If I feel shame or I feel anger, or if I start to go down this, like, what am I feeling and why? I feel apprehensive or anxious. Well, maybe those things that we value, those things that we truly value, we do get a little bit more anxious on. But our goal is to name that emotion and figure out the why, and then we work our way backwards of figuring out, okay, if this is how I'm feeling in this situation, what can I do from my scope of control to proof point this? Our brain has to go from point A to point B. And when we don't have objective facts or what I like to call proof points in between to get us from point A to point B, we tend to make up these wonderful stories in our head because the brain has to think that it is in control. Our ego takes over and we are in control of our own story. Well, guess what? We're always the hero in our own story. And so when we have an absence of fact, our brain's going to make up this narrative that keeps us in that ego space where we are the hero in our own story. So being able to pinpoint what are some proof points and some factualities that I can illustrate to get myself from point A to point B can be phenomenal along the way. So then that's where we start to look at the power of choice. I'm going to choose to respond in this capacity. I'm going to choose to spend my time prepping so that I have a better outcome for a meeting. I'm going to choose to allocate these resources this time. I'm choosing what I want to do with my intention. So when we look at from psychologist Susan David, the ability to be with your emotions. We really want to think of agility in that capacity. It's the ability to be with your emotions and not be controlled by them. Recognize them. An emotion is a normal response to something that happens from an experience that you are living. It's okay that they happen. What are you going to do with it? Most of the time, it's signaling to you to tell you something. So if you can figure out, all right, what is that emotion and how can I dig into that to understand it a little bit better? It's your body's physiological way of either trying to get you to wake up and pay attention or figure out what's going on. So listen to that inner voice. It's trying to tell you something. All right, so we have had these amazing experiences that we call in life, and sometimes we have career setbacks. So I will tell you, when I got laid off, there was a part of my life where I had been riding high in my career, and then, of course, sometimes things come to a crashing halt. It might not even be within the scope of your control, but what you choose to do next makes all the difference. So had a career setback, and it was interesting because it's why I went out on my own and started my own company. I never wanted to be owned by somebody specifically ever again. And so through that, I had to figure out, how do I bet on myself? Now, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I knew that I loved the work comp space and I knew I was an expert. I was already an adjunct professor, and I was like, there has to be a way to do all of this better. And so I had a pep talk from a friend and then really got clear on what did I want to do. I'm an expert in workers' compensation and I'm a behavioral scientist. How do I bring this together to make the world a better place? So I had to quiet some of that initial self-doubt and fear. And this is where you've got to figure out those people that you choose to surround yourself with. Are they going to be your cheerleaders, or are they going to be the people that are like, that's a stupid idea? I tended to surround myself with people that were like, let me help you get this going. And then if you're not going to bet on yourself now, when are you going to do it? And it's been great to see this evolve and grow and change into what it is now. But I had to find that grit to keep going and persist when the times were tough. And then also some grace from healing, because losing a corporate space like that is a big part of our identity. Think about how we introduce ourselves. We go by name and occupation. We do this all the time because it's how we establish status in social situations. As much as you want to say, no, that's not true. Yep, it's exactly why we do that. We say, hi, my name is blank, and we are trying to assert status and power by our positions that we hold. We're wired like this. It's very tribal instinct, as well as we are conditioned to respond like this. So if you ever lose your job, a lot of that is losing your identity, and it can absolutely feel like a complete setback. But What I did was make myself do one thing, at least one thing every day to keep myself moving forward. What am I going to do to invest in myself today? How do I continue to push myself forward? And it has been fantastic. I love helping employers build out their workers' compensation plans. How do we do a soup to nuts approach for workers' compensation? It is things that I love to do. I love the strategy behind it. I love working with people. And then I went full time in faculty, and now I get to be a professor, and I have a lovely time working with students and educating and researching, and it's very fun. Now, if you would have asked me if this was my career path, I would have said nope. But you know what? The experience and that journey really help us along the way. And I got into keynote speaking as a result of that, which is one of my favorite things to do on the face of this earth. That is where my true soul shines. So, what are you looking at? What story or what challenges have happened to you? Now I've emerged stronger, wiser, and way more authentic because I understand that losing a piece of your identity is really hard. Something that I'll tell you that really helped with my resilience during this time period when I felt like a huge part of my identity had been removed. I went back to what I knew to be true from like day one of me being a child. What are the certain things that I knew down to my core that had always been there with me? All right, I love stage presence. I've been in dance since I was about 18 months, 2 years old. I like to own a stage. So if you've ever gotten to hear me speak, I like to come with a lot of energy and vibrancy. That has been in me since I was a very, very, very small child. I'm also brave, and I'm brave from a leadership standpoint. So being able to say things to people that might be little bit harder, maybe not as courageous for some people. I don't have a problem doing that. So I wanted to take all of those things that I knew about myself that have been with me forever and really help me emerge as this different version of myself as an adult. And I'll tell you, it has made all the difference and it feels great. When we go back to that emerging stronger, wiser, more authentic, you're never starting over. You're starting from all of that experience. And so while you might not be able to choose all the cards that you are dealt, you get to figure out how you want to play them and how you can emerge as a different version of yourself. And the whole idea is that we're continuously reinventing ourselves. We're trying to grow to be a better version of ourselves than we were yesterday. Think about plants. They want their sun, they need their water, and they continue to grow and thrive if they're in environments that want to support them. Let's be that plant. Let's keep growing. So now I want us to get into some of this grit and grace framework. So I hope that by me telling you my personal narrative on this, that I will also tell you that when I admitted to being self-employed for a little while, and I am self-employed. I gotta remember that. I gotta just say that, period. But I'll tell you that there was a bit of shame with that until I heard a woman last week. She is Gen Z, and she said, yeah, I wasn't getting promoted at work, so I promoted myself and I started my own company. And I had never thought about this. So when we think about resilience and how quickly we can reframe, and we're looking at how do we reframe our neural pathways, there's a lot of bold vibrancy that lives within other people telling a story that is similar to ours. They've just done the work and figured out a framework that works with their brain. And so I loved hearing her say that because I went up and talked to her afterwards and I was like, that's so funny that you say that. I'm like, I always felt like being self-employed was like not great. And she was like, girl, it is the ultimate freedom. Why don't you start paying attention to that? And I was like, this is so amazing. I wish I would have had this vibrant soul in my life during that time period, but had it now, embracing this, owning it, and moving on. So, how do we pretend or how do we continue down this framework with balancing out that grit and grace, continuing to persevere and being kind to yourself along the way? Tenacity, tenacity, one of the best words ever, and energy renewal. All right, that is that. We're going to continue to do it. I got this. I got this. I got this. We've got to find ways to restore that energy bank. So, again, that cognitive load, that's your energy bank. And we want to figure out how to protect it with your boundaries. And then also, what do we do to revitalize yourself? What fuels you and gives you joy? Then we want to focus on that intentionality and connection piece. Being intentional with your time. We're not multitasking, guys. We stop. Be intentional with your time. Time is your only currency. Utilize it to the fullest advantage that you have. Utilizing those elements of connection too. How not only to connection to you with your purpose and the work that you're doing, but also connection to other people. Relationships are that next level up when we start to look at that life force pyramid where we've got movement and nutrition and sleep as our foundational components. That next layer is your relationships. So we're looking at that connection piece, that connection to other human beings that can help provide you some support and remind you of your purpose along the way. Those people are the biggest people that you need in your life, from mentors to cheerleaders to friends to colleagues that help remind you that you're not alone in this space. And this is my moment to remind you, you are not alone. You are meant to be here right now listening to this. Let's keep going and remind you why. So then we're going to reframe things. We got to reframe where we're at, where we want to go, and what that looks like. All right. So setbacks happen. How do we reframe this? There is an amazing talk that I heard at one point that was speaking about, oh, didn't get the job promotion? Good. It's a chance for you to try harder. Oh, didn't get the resources you needed? Good. It's a way for you to get innovative and think a different way. And it's all about this reframing of situations that we consider setbacks, but they kept saying it was good because it's going to give you an opportunity to get better, or it gives you an opportunity to think differently, to innovate, think in a different capacity, and use your critical thinking skills. We live in a very consumer-based model of education and how we want to utilize decision making. We want people to draw the dots together for us very easily, and we're missing that critical thinking component. So when we're looking at our reframing and taking stock in our own awareness, look at this from a critical thinking lens. All right, what is this teaching me? Not what is happening to me, but what is this teaching me? This is a lesson that I need to learn. And if you can shift that mindset, it helps you be more mindful with your intentionality, and getting you to have a more positive mindset overall. And then we have the grounding and gentleness that really help with that grace component. This is your foundation of balance within that grit to grace framework. So let's get down to defining what grit and grace mean. So, G for grit. We're going to start with the G. We've got to ground ourselves. Grounding rituals create stability. This might be something as simple as practicing a minute of deep breathing when you wake up in the morning. We know meditation is important. This can be really helpful from centering yourself to start your framework of the day. Getting outside and grounding yourself, literally being barefoot on the ground, can be also really helpful with this. Doing a brain drain, journaling, letting yourself just think differently. Journaling can be so powerful. There are so many benefits to writing because writing accesses a different part of your brain. There are some studies done by Jordan Peterson from 2010 that talk about this and what are the benefits of writing and why does that help us so much? It accesses a more intimate part of your brain. This is a quiet space for you to be alone with your thoughts and to freely articulate them in a manner that is safe and protective for you. And then also having that spirituality component can be really helpful from a grounding perspective. It helps you with your purpose and your passion and really giving thanks and gratitude for the day ahead. When we start to look at reframing, is this the whole story, or am I just being picky with the parts that I want to pay attention to? If we look at our brain wants to get from point A to point B, what are we filling that proof points with along that journey? Got to think about that. And then shift the question. All right, more than one thing can be true at any point. A lot of times we like to give an example and then say, but I'm going to ask you to stop using the but word and start using and. Two things can be true. I can feel that something is unfair and also it be justified by the actions that were presented. Two things can be true. You can have your emotional feeling and you can have the logical construct for what has transpired. Both things can exist. So then we start to shift it into a, what is this teaching me? What else could be true? What am I missing? And it's okay to notice that those things are happening. And then what am I going to do with it? All right, what is in the scope of my control that I can take an action or I can reframe my mind or I can approach this differently to keep moving forward? And then we look at intentionality. I want you to think about how you divide up your time and your day. So each one of these pieces of the pie can be very specific to where you're spending your time, your talent, and your energy, and your resources. How intentional do you want to be in a moment? So a lot of times we think that we can multitask or we'll be working on a project and stop and just do a quick Instagram scroll, or maybe we've got Netflix streaming in the background. Be intentional with your time. If you're not going to be fully present, should you have said no to the meeting, the lunch, you name it, we want you to be really intentional with your time because, again, that is your most valuable asset. And if we're looking at your cognitive load and your energy bank, what are you going to do with this? This is your set amount for the day. How can you be intentional with dividing it out to the pieces of the chart? And also make sure you get a piece of this pie. There's plenty to go around, but you have to be intentional about carving out a piece that is specific to you. It can make all the difference. Remember, this is powerful. This is your life. What do you want to do with your time? This is where we choose. So if you are choosing to go to a meeting that maybe you don't think you add value, what else could you have been doing during that time? When you say yes to things, you are actively saying no to other things. So there might be a political idea that you need to be at something, but do you really? Unless somebody has come in to tell you, yes, I need you here. Yes, you need to do this. And it is very important that you are attending these things. Can you take some of your time back and your intentionality? I'm a big believer of no agenda, no attenda. Again, use this sparingly and make sure that you understand the constructs between your time. But if we're ever going to take people's time on a calendar, I want to know what value I add, why you need that time, and is it truly that you need my time in that space? Is there a call to action that we're going to be preparing for, or could this have been an email? We want to be intentional also with how we set the stage because we are leading by example. So what you allow, what you tolerate is teaching people how to continue to treat you along the way. So I like to push back on meetings. Meetings are an easy, low-hanging fruit. Is there a way that this could be an email? Does this need to be, are we roundtabling something? Are we trying to collaborate around this to see which pieces of the part that people are going to own? What do you need? Why do I need to be here during this time? And I'm very specific about that because if it's something that it's like, well, this is general awareness. Well, I'm not going to be there for general awareness. You can send me an email, send me a copy of the notes, or I'll get them from someone else. If you're going to ask me to spend my time there, I'm not interested in adding hidden labor to my jobs. So, something for you to also consider. There's a lot of hidden labor that goes into some of our work, and we want to be intentional with our time, our talent, our resources, our money. Be smart. Time is the only currency. Then, as we are going down this grit, we're at T, tenacity. Keep showing up. This is 95% of the job, showing up every day. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to get out of bed and go. One of the things that I've started to do is that Mel Robbins 5 4 3 2 1 time to get up and go. And I stand up right when my alarm goes off and I stretch and I'm like, yes, it's a beautiful day to be alive. Thank you, Dr. Shepard from Grey's Anatomy. I see you. I love that phrase. But that is what gets me going in the morning because if I'm not going to jumpstart my own day, no one's coming to do it for me. So, how do you do this for yourself where you keep showing up? It doesn't have to be 100% every day. Some days it's going to be 100%, other days maybe it's 75. Your goal is to just be consistent in how you show up. Just keep going. This is the little engine that could. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. We want consistency over intensity. Intensity are these short bursts of very focused time. But our goal is to do this day after day after day. And when we're building resilience and we're building our how quickly can we bounce back, we want to be consistent versus intense. So think about that. Also understand that a lot of the stuff that we're doing is a process. So if you're going to start with boundaries, you're going to start by saying no, you're going to name those emotions. We're going to do some of the work. Please trust in the process that it isn't a one and done, and that the better that you get at showing up and showing up for yourself and saying no and taking back your time, practicing the when I say no, I'm saying yes to myself, the results will follow and your resilience will get better and better and better because you're showing up for you. You're being intentional with your time. When these setbacks happen, you know you have your own back. And that is so powerful. And it is such a great epiphany when you don't have to actually cognitively think about it. It just ends up innately happening. There's something so beautiful about that. And you can do that for yourself. Then we have to learn how to embrace small wins. I will tell you, embracing the wins is really hard for me. I'm a chronic overachiever. I want to keep going and going and going, but I don't feel the wins along the way. Something that I've tried to do to be much more mindful in this is to put my hands over my heart and I say, I receive this. And I take a moment to feel if it is an email that says, hey, you did a great job, or hey, you got this project, you got funding, you did whatever, or could be a LinkedIn post or an acknowledgement of some kind. I take the moment, I take a deep breath, and I say, I feel this. I receive this. This is good. Because we've got to be able to feel those wins. And while we're really good at naming those negative emotions, sometimes those positive emotions where we feel joy or happy or excited, we're excited because things are going well, or we get to actually feel like that smile that you're radiating is bigger than normal because you're truly happy in the moment. We want to feel that and embrace that and know that that's okay. Grit. This is where we really look at this and we really focus on how we're going to do this. Grounding, reframing, some intentionality, and tenacity. Keep showing up. Do it for you, Make yourself proud. All right, so now let's go into the grace part. We focused on grit. Now we've got grace, Grace, our 5 letters into fabulousness here. Gentleness. Notice when you're harsh on yourself. Okay. That's a huge awareness. Like I told you, we're going to peel apart that onion. And I will tell you, sometimes the onion is icky on the inside. It is not prim and pristine. This is why we're peeling an onion. And that is the multiple layers that we have for ourselves. Be aware of your own self-criticism. And when you can start figuring out how to reframe that, it can be really powerful. Not a, duh, that was stupid. Why did you do that? But more of a, okay, what caused this? Is there something that I missed? How could I have done? What can I do to set myself up for the next time to be better? Because again, this is a resiliency thing. We are teaching ourselves how to bounce forward after a setback. So be on your side. If we're going back from that grace, this is our grace perspective. Become aware when you criticize yourself. What is what is your body actually telling you during these times? Pay attention to this voice up here. You've got to start rewiring it. You've got to be your own best friend in this construct. Okay? So when you look at yourself in the mirror, what are you saying? When situations like this happen, how can you give yourself a pep talk? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just going to tell you that it's going to be worth it. And you've got to use the intentionality and the time that you have to be able to do this. Give yourself a moment to pause. Pause. Create space before responding. We tend to have immediate emotional reactions, and guess what? Your face has already responded. But what I need you to do is just give yourself a pause and understand it's okay to feel what you're feeling. But before you choose your response, give yourself a moment to just breathe. I want you to think about how you befriend yourself. You need to have your own back before anybody else. You need to show up for you. It is your obligation and responsibility to make this fierce, fabulous soul that is you resilient with kindness, adding some compassion, and knowing that you can do this. You have survived everything up to this point. Nothing is going to get you off your rocker. You got this. So speak to yourself the way you would. I want you to envision, stop for a second, because if you don't have kids, I don't want to say how you would talk to your child or how you would talk to your best friend. I want you to go back and envision that 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old version of yourself and think about, would you talk to them that way? If we do some of that like inner child work, like how can you give yourself a little bit of extra love? So I want you to think about, how would you talk to that little human, that was you. We are talking to ourselves with respect and dignity. All right. We have the desire to make ourselves better. So couple that desire to push yourself forward with respect along the way. That gentleness you can offer yourself is going to be everything. And at the end of the day, it's just dishes. I was dealing, I think I've actually said this in a different speaking event, but we were talking about dishes in the sink. And it was funny because my daughter was like, yeah, Dad's so upset about this. He said I was totally disrespecting him. And, people's rules in their houses are their rules. But at the end of the day, if grades are good, it's just dishes. Whatever it is, we think about life and how important it is, or how loved our people feel. I want you to think about this for yourself. At the end of the day, they're just dishes. It's probably one of my favorite talks right now, is literally, it's just dishes. Move on. All right, what's next? And choose kindness. Here's the other thing. Your tone of voice, your body's responding to it because your body hears you. If you don't think about that, your cells are always listening to you, whether you're talking just inside your head or you're articulating it auditorily, you're still hearing yourself. So your nervous system is responding to what tone of voice that you are using. And so it responds accordingly to what you're going through. And so this is why we ask, oh, give me that pause before you respond. Your body will thank you for it. Gives you a little bit of additional calmness, and we move forward along that way. All right, so we've been gentle. Now we're going to release. All right, we're done with perfectionism. We raise women to be perfectionists. We raise boys to be resilient. It's time that we start all becoming resilient. Excellence isn't perfection. Excellence is using grit and showing up every day with that tenacity. So we're done. We're done with the perfectionism. Good is okay. You don't have to be perfect. You can be great some days and you can be good other days, but just keep showing up and doing the work. Done is better than perfect. Get it off your desk, move on to whatever's next. Focus on what you can control and what you can influence. So, this is where we start to look at how do I talk to ourselves? What is our brain thinking? How are we controlling that narrative that exists within our brain? And let go of the outcomes. All right. You can't control the outcomes. Our goal is to focus on what we can control, the intentionality behind our decision making, and using some critical thinking. We make the decision and then move on to the next. The outcome is irrelevant at this point. We're also going to release others' expectations. You need to make yourself proud. Not everyone's going to like you. We know this. It's also none of your business what other people think of you. It is our business to be aware of how we're perceived. This is why when I tell you I'm prepping for certain meetings, I want to be aware of knowing what my face looks like, the tones that I'm going to use, and I want to pay attention to my body language because I know all of that is communicating. I can be aware of all of that and also still not care about other people's expectations. I'm the one that gets to go to bed with me every night. I'm the one that gets to wake up, be me, look at myself in the mirror, and know I got my own back. So other people's expectations don't exist there. Plus, I am way harder on myself than anyone else is going to be. High overachiever. So your expectations do not even come close to what my own expectations of myself are. So otherwise, remember that nobody's going to understand. They're not going to understand where you're at, where your head's at, what your experiences are. We come with our own beautiful baggage of personal perceptive features. So remember, your path is yours alone. And when things don't work out, it's just not part of your story, and that's okay. You'll figure out why that didn't happen or it did happen in the way that it did to protect you, to help you move forward, to move into a different life journey. It's okay. Just remember, your path is yours alone. You're not in competition with other people. But if it's not working out for you, it's just not part of your story, and that's okay. Release. All right. Awareness. Awareness is a superpower. Love awareness. Figure out what triggers you. I know what triggers you. You violate one of my values, and I'm coming. It's actually what sets all of us off is when there's a violation of your values. Now, where we struggle is that we don't necessarily know what those values are. We think we know, but if I asked you, what are your top 5 values? Could you rattle them off? What do those look like for you? We want to figure out what activates those stress responses in you. Maybe it's early morning meetings where people are unprepared. Okay, why? If you value time, if time is your only currency, and we start to look at what do you value, we understand why certain situations might trigger you. We want to be aware of that. And then what do you do to move forward? On days where I am unbelievably depleted, what I need to do, what I need laughter, and I need to be able to get a good night's sleep. And usually I'm dehydrated. Welcome to the world of Dr. Claire, where she can preach all of this and also needs to go get a drink of water when she is done here. So I'm aware of this. Also, so I know that I need those during my like rough periods. I gotta laugh out loud. I know that. I've got to figure out what does it for me. So Schitt's Creek in the office, thank you. Those are things that are gonna make me laugh out loud. I also want to figure out where's my energy going? Energy awareness. What is depleting me and what is recharging me? So think about that from a people standpoint, the people that you work with. What gets you fueled? What depletes you? How do you start to activate more of that refueling? Like one of the new hobbies that I started last year was reading fictional books. They absolutely are like my Cheetos of junk food, where I'm like, oh, I just want to do that. All right. Well, how do I function in a way that gives me that as like my cheat idea or my like cheat meal or whatever? I'm like, okay, so if I get this done, then I can go read. But that reinvigorates my soul. It gets me thinking differently. I read a lot of academia, a lot of research, a lot of journal articles. And so to read some of these murder mysteries or things like that get me really excited because it's something different and it revitalizes me. Walking in nature is something else that gives me a big energy burst. So if I know I'm struggling, I will try and get out and go outside and get moving and leave my phone because it makes a huge difference on how I track my energy and what's going to come next. And then awareness, that present moment. Pay attention to your body language. How are you seated? Where is your energy? Where are we at? Taking a deep breath in. And exhale, paying attention to your mindfulness and being here in the present moment. If you're with another person, if you're eating, whatever that looks like, really being there. What are you seeing? What are you tasting? What are you smelling? What are you hearing? What are you touching? Using those senses to really cultivate that present moment. Then, as we are moving forward in our grace word, we are now on to C, which is that connection. Your number one connection point is to be connected to yourself. Self-leadership, self-awareness, self-regulation, all of this starts with you first. It's an inside job. So, how do you start to have that authentic relationship with yourself? Figuring out what are your gaps. You can use other people that can help you figure this out. And also, you already know. You just have to be willing to dig into that for yourself. You don't have to do this alone. There can be help offered. We also think about this from like your inner circle. Those are those five people that you surround yourself with the most. I hope they are your closest supporters that you can go to ask for help, to ask for some perception, maybe asking for an alternative perspective. We also want to look at what is your community. All right. I've actually had this conversation earlier today that was talking about spirituality and religion and why people tend to go through, like, why do people want to be connected to the church? And we talked so heavily about, is it actually the faith-based dynamic of religion itself, or is it the community aspect? And so when we think about how powerful community is, it's just people having like-mindedness on their journey and coming together as a whole. So when we think about what does your community look like, where do you draw from? When we're looking for human connection, remember that in 2023, the Surgeon General produced an 82-page report talking about how we have entered into a loneliness epidemic. What I want for you is to really pay attention to, how do you have that relationship with yourself? Are you your own best advocate? Because you need to be. So, how can you continue to work on yourself and inspire yourself and take care of this amazing human? That's you. And then we look at, how is your inner circle? How are they playing it into this? What does your community look like? And where are your mentors? And we're not talking about like just one mentor, but it's great to have a board of directors that have different skill sets, whether it be a reverse mentor, an expert in their field, or an expert in your field. What about people that are the polar opposite of you to help you, which identify your gaps and your shortcomings? Having people that can be your cheerleader or your sponsor that say your name in rooms that you aren't in. This makes such a big difference for your connection piece. And when we were talking about that life force pyramid, all right, you know, that bottom layer, movement, nutrition, and sleep. I'm going to say this 100 billion times so that you can get that through your mind, that if you're ever having an off day, pay attention to, how well did I sleep? Where's my nutrition and hydration at? And have I moved my body today? Massive. Next level, relationships. Where is your connection? Connection to yourself, connection to your people, connection to your community, and who is your mentor? Get a couple of them. Get that cheat code for those who've walked before you. It's powerful and it's so important. Now, lastly, energy renewal. All right. E, energy renewal. We're looking at rest is productive. Okay, this one is still really hard for me to grasp, but I know that my cells and my body need sleep to rejuvenate themselves. Sleep is non-negotiable self-care. Again, if we go back to the life force pyramid here, I go again. Sleep, nutrition, movement. Sleep is in there. Now, what is the right sleep schedule for you? You need to figure that one out for yourself. Not everyone needs the same amount, but we want to think about, how are you getting that sleep? We want to be restoring ourselves, because how well you slept the night before is going to give you your readiness for the day. That readiness is that cognitive load. It is that energy bank for you for the day, and how you're going to spend it as a resource throughout your day. Hopefully you are paying attention to your calendar, setting your boundaries, knowing what you can and can't do based on how your sleep was the night before. And then we look at sleep from a consistency standpoint. How does that look? Are you proud of it? We want to pay attention to that. Rest is productive. Then joy is medicine. Laughter is medicine. Feeling good makes huge difference. Stress breeds infection. We know that it can be really harmful to the body. It can cause cancer. We've got lots of stuff. Stress manifests in the body in a physical form. So joy is the opposite of this. This is where we want to look at pleasure and how do you heal your nervous system. Looking at joy in a way that you radiate out. It's a different type of smile. It's a different type of energy, but doing what makes you feel good, moving your body, dancing around, being out in sunlight, being in nature. Maybe your job really does do that for you. And then pay attention to your nourishment again, because sleep, nutrition, and movement are those foundational components to the life force pyramid. I told you I was going to say it again. But food, movement, nature, creativity, where are you drawing your nourishment from? Podcasts, music, media, social media. What are you watching television wise? What are you watching movie wise? All of this pertains to your holistic nutrition. Pay attention. It matters. And lastly, play. When's the last time you've gone out to go play? You should do that. You should find things that give you in that element of play where you get into that element of flow and remember that that brings joy. Play brings joy, and this can make you happy. So find some time to cut out and go do something fun for you. So we're gonna get on this, wrapping this up because thank you for spending this past hour with me. But I want you to think about this. What would it look like to lead with grit and grace in this current season of your life? I want you to go ahead and close your eyes for me. Take a big, deep breath in and exhale. Roll those shoulders back and down. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think of yourself emerging. All right. So butterflies go through this chrysalis phase and then they have some struggle before they become this beautiful butterfly. And that's where I want you to think about resilience. It is that bounce back into becoming that beautiful butterfly. And sometimes the resistance is going to feel like that chrysalis to cocoon where you're breaking your way out. I want you to picture your most resilient self. Keep your eyes closed right now. I want you to notice your posture. How are you standing? Where are you? What's your energy level? And how are you looking at yourself from a mindset perspective? Where does that mindset exist? Now, I want you to think about changing your body language as you are seated. Again, those eyes closed. Take another deep breath in through your nose. Exhale out through your mouth. Your posture, your energy, your mindset. Have that come into your body right now. Take another deep breath in through your nose. Exhale out through your mouth. Open your eyes. Embody this vision, this vision and this version of yourself right now. So some things that I want you to think about today. I will have some resilience prompts for you. We will have another article on Bloom to help you with some more resources because this is important. How do you build some of these tools and tricks into your day to day? And this is where we look at how do I take a mindful moment? How do I start to calendar off time for myself and some tips and tricks that really help along this journey. So I want you to just pick one area of your life. Maybe we're going to start to take control of our calendar and you're going to block off some time. That's like Monday mornings. Those first 2 hours of the day are going to be yours and it's non-negotiable because those first 2 hours of the day are going to help you level set what's going to happen for the week. You are in charge of your time. You are in charge of your energy. Take those 2 hours to plan your week. And then I want you to calendar off the last 2 hours of your workday on Friday, if you're working a Monday through Friday, because those 2 hours are going to be your time to wrap up any projects that you need to clear your headspace to be able to go play for the weekends. Figure out what that's going to look like for you, and then build out your calendar so that it's working in your best interest. I want you to try and commit to one practice a week, just 1 week. It's a 1 week challenge. Practice something. And all right, what are you going to do if you're faced with a roadblock? All right, let's say your hard stop is 4 p.m. and somebody's coming into your office at 3:57. How do you maintain your boundary if you have something that you need to be at, but you've got to stop at home or whatever that looks like to be somewhere by a specific time? Think about how you're going to handle those situations because those boundaries and how you show up are going to mean everything from your self-respect and your desire to really take control of this resiliency component. And then I want you to share your journey. What's going on with you? We want to be a part of your community and you're here on Bloom. And so we want to hear what's working for you. And this is where we can start to share out to get better. So you are already resilient. Now you just have to trust it. Trust your journey. Each challenge helps you rise and build that resilience so you can bounce back faster than you did before. Remember, grit without grace burns out, and our goal is to keep our balance between that grit and grace as we broke it down. You matter. Your energy creates ripples. You are so important, and I am so grateful that you are here with us today. So thank you for your time. A couple more takeaways from me. I want to know what resonated with you. What tool are you going to try? How are you going to implement this daily? So I want you to think about one takeaway that you can utilize today. And hopefully it's to take stock in some hydration, maybe pay attention to how you're sleeping. How are you going to add in some movement to your day? Again, if you are calendaring off that beginning of the Monday, beginning of or end of Friday, how do you start building in some time for you to take control of your calendar, of your schedule, of your emotions, and figuring out what is going to be the best for you to move forward? So stay connected. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I want you to pay attention to our amazing resources that we have here on Bloom. You can go to drclairemusselman.com to find out more, and you can go to justbloomco.com for the Just Bloom Collective. We have the next Inspired series is going to be coming to you in the next week. They drop in the Bloom Vault for our recorded sessions, and our live sessions are listed on the website. If you are looking to get on an email list, go hop on over to drclairemusselman.com. Love to have you joining me for future events. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And remember, you matter. Take the time to invest in yourself.